Bloody rabbits at war with each other. Guess what? It's a children's movie. Oh, but wait, it's an animated movie too, and it's definitely for adults. It's the 1978 English movie Watership Down. Based on the classic book by Richard Adams, this is one of the more interesting, complex, and darker animated movies ever made. Watership Down was given the Criterion Collection treatment. Let's see what makes this movie great and why it would be put in the Criterion Collection coming up next. So Watership Down is a 1978 animated movie, as I said, written and directed by the New York City-based writer Martin Rosen, who adapted Richard Adams' Watership Down, the famous sort of children's or adults novel about rabbits in England, written and published in 1972. This movie is about a group or possibly tribe of rabbits in England whose home, their original warren, is destroyed. They have to go and seek new shelter, find a new place to exist. This is sort of a tribal journey where they cross landscapes and they run into several problems, several rival groups of people, several things like dogs or cats or birds that want to kill and eat them. The tribe of rabbits features several types of individuals. You've got your leader rabbit named Hazel. You've got your big fighter rabbit named Bigwig. You've got a prophet rabbit who is always kind of prophesying something terrible or ominous happening to the rabbits.
The field, it's covered with blood.
Blood? That is silly.
Now, I really don't want to say anything more about this plot, but I do find the experience of this movie to be really just stunning, even though this movie is 42 years old. And the animation is going to look dated and perhaps cheap to some of you. I actually find it to be pretty profound. It fits with the story, it fits with the themes, it fits with the ideas of the movie. Let me give you some context for the Watership Down, first the story and the movie, and I think that's going to expand your understanding of what's going on in this particular movie. Now, first, Richard Adams was a World War II veteran. He ended up writing this novel for his kids who actually helped him write the story of Watership Down. He had a hard time getting the novel published. Finally it was, and it became a wild success. Now, Martin Rosen makes this movie. It's his passion project. It comes out during a time where I find animated movies are changing. Actually, kids' movies in general are becoming much, much darker. You can sort of find that in the late 1970s Disney movies. The Fox and the Hound, for example. The Rescuers is another one. And then the other movies being made, by Jim Henson, for example, The Dark Crystal. You've got Dragon Slayer. In the early 1980s, you've got Neverending Story, and you've got the harrowing and disturbing Return to Oz, the sequel to The Wizard of Oz. A number of other kids' movies like that before I find they become a little bit more fluffy later in the 1980s or early 1990s. And in Watership Down, you do get a lot of blood, a lot of gore. Question is why? This movie wants to be a bit more realistic about the struggles and trials of, first, animals and nature, second, of what children or even whoever watches this will face in their lives. So many Disney movies that I've seen, especially before the 1970s, they take classic books that are edgy or dark, like Alice in Wonderland or Pinocchio or Bambi, and they sort of Disneyfy them. I'm not all against Disney animation. I find that Snow White and Pinocchio, those are really well done, Sleeping Beauty, but those tend toward melodramas, and they sort of suck out the reality of evil from the works of art that they are. I find that they sort of trivialize evil to some extent, making it sort of a fantasy and not grounding it in reality, which Watership Down clearly does. The movie says that this group of rabbits face death at every turn, at every step. Something's out to kill them, some bad accident could happen to them. And when you see the rabbits bleed in this movie, it's really trying to be as realistic as it can for an animated movie. And then you've got sort of the tradition of rabbits in popular culture. Bugs Bunny, he's a jokester, a trickster, he's goofy. You've got Beatrix Potter, an English writer as well, who's writing about nice little pleasant rabbits like Peter Rabbit. You got the rabbit in Winnie the Pooh. So these are classic characters that, Watership Down is actually reacting to. And when it creates its rabbits, you've got some serious hardcore rabbit wars going on. And of course, that's what Richard Adams, I think, in Watership Down, the novel, was reacting to. So in the movie Watership Down, the stakes are quite high for these rabbits trying to survive. In this movie, more than hearkening back to, the English tradition of Beatrix Potter, for example, actually goes back to the ancient narratives. This movie reminds me actually quite a bit of, Homer's Odyssey, to a very small extent, the Iliad. When tribal peoples write their epics, are writing about immigration, warfare, battling other groups of people, trying to make peace with them, trying to settle down, as well having their own mythology, their system of gods and goddesses, and reasons for why bad things happen to good people. And of course, Watership Down, both the novel and the movie, and I think the movie does this really well, is show the rabbit mythology, the seriousness of it, the heavy weight of it. These rabbits as a group have to believe in something beyond themselves that transcends themselves, and first of all, in order to survive, but also, the legitimate belief that I am not just the highest thing on the food chain, or I, of course, am not the greatest thing in the world. Movie begins with the rabbit mythology, it ends with the rabbit mythology, and has the figure of the death rabbit come, threaten to take away the rabbits' lives. Thus, the movie, in a way, is not a kid's movie, although I did show it to my own children. It's a little bit scary for younger children, but it confronts you with the fact that you will die. That's one thing I like about the darker children's movies I mentioned earlier in this video. They usually don't pull any punches. They want to tell you that life can be scary and threatening. You've got to toughen up, and you've got to prepare for your own death. In fact, that's what all the ancient epics that people still love and quote today are telling us.
What do we do now, Fiver?
Go away from here. Look. Look. That's the place for us. High, lonely hills, where the wind and the sound carry, and the ground's as dry as straw in a barn. That's where we ought to be. That's where we have to get to.
Now, another thing I love about Watership Down is the animation. I find that the three-dimensional drawings featured throughout the movie trick me. There's a lot of variations of those drawings, a lot of different landscapes, and Rosen uses the technique of panning across, animated scenes, for example, to make the whole scene look much larger than it is. In fact, I think what they had is they animated a huge cell. They take the camera, or they focus on one part of the cell, they pan across it, and then that makes the whole landscape come alive. Because of that technique, I think this movie does in fact feel like a journey across several different environments. And because of the variation in animation, including the opening scene of mythology, including sort of dream sequences in the middle of the movie, and then at the end of the movie, sort of a dream sequence as well. They're peppered throughout the movie. I find that this is a deeper, richer experience, probably 99% of all children's movies I've ever seen. And because I'm a parent of several children, I actually have probably watched 99% of all children's movies released since 1960. And because this movie, like the novel, talks to both children and adults at their level, and it's very hard to find artworks, literary works that do great work at reaching all audiences, I find that this movie in particular, if you're willing to accept its darker premises about life, is worth pursuing for you no matter what your age is. Last thing I want to say about this movie is the politics of it. Clearly it's announcing, that life as it is tribal. These rabbits are tribal, but of course they're stand-ins for human groups, as just about every story about animals is. You look out in nature and you see groups of things that have banded together, whether it's a pride of lions, a pack of dogs, or a group of humans. And one thing about this movie, it's post-apocalyptic, only with rabbits. In fact, if these were humans in the movie, this would be a science fiction movie, but because it's about rabbits, it makes it a fantasy. It makes it look like it's a children's movie. But don't sell Watership Down short. It's talking about tribalism in the modern world. It's talking about how we form small groups or cliques of people. We have our own territories or properties, whether those are physical or ideological or virtual or online. There are groups of rabbits, a la humans, warring against other rabbits or humans. Just look at all around YouTube for that. And the question is, can we ever transcend our tribalism? I think Watership Down at once says, maybe, but probably not. And clearly the movie says, well, you can add or shift groups of rabbits around, but by the end, you're still going to have a tribe. I think that's interesting, important, because the basis of all political structures is the local level, whether it's the family or clan. Modern world condemns tribalism. It says we should get rid of that and become globalists, get rid of your family, get rid of your extended family, get rid of your clan, and become one with the great global community. That just doesn't work. If we're going to have a global community, you have to have all these other layers that are infinitely more human or at the human level. That's one thing I appreciate about this movie, more so than most other kids' movies, is it's dealing with real-world political problems and ideas. Now, you can find Watership Down, I think, for free on YouTube. I would recommend, though, checking out the Criterion Collection edition. They've cleaned it up and made it sparkle. It looks great in high definition. Please try that one out. Have you seen this movie? What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments. And what age do you think you should give this movie to children? My own view is probably 9 years old, but it depends on the child. Earlier than that, this movie can be pretty scary. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't for more great content. I'd appreciate it. Thank you and have a great day.